Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And I hope everyone had a fantastic holiday. I, for one, am glad to be back, and I've got a great one on deck this evening. It's got a little bit of everything. Bigfoot encounters, an unidentified cryptid, strange winged beast. One witness believes he actually encountered a real-life skinwalker, and even one sighting of something that the witness described only as a bear man. These accounts are all real and a little bit disturbing, but definitely worth the trip. And speaking of which, it's time to grab your gear and let's ride to Cryptid Country. Number 1. Dear Biker, my family is from Guatemala, and my parents grew up in a town close to the pyramids of Tikal in a very mountainous area. In 1976, when my parents were around 10 to 12 years old, there was a horrible earthquake that killed and injured tens of thousands of people. My dad was even trapped for days under the rubble of his home before being rescued. It's a horrible memory for them. I have many family members with similar stories. That isn't the paranormal part, though, but the events leading up to it were. This is the story told to me by my parents. About a year earlier, maybe a little more, strange things started to happen in the forested mountains near their town. It started with the cries. Every night, something would continuously cry in the mountains. At first, they thought it was possibly a wildcat in heat. However, they started to realize that this sound could be heard from everywhere in the town. My mom said it sounded like a man wailing in pain or anguish. It happened every night around the same time and would sometimes last for hours. A few months later, the sightings started. It all began with a huge bird or something flying over the town and mountains. But this wasn't like any bird anyone there had ever seen, though. This thing apparently had a wingspan that dwarfed even the harpy eagles they were accustomed to seeing. And its head looked, well, longer, like a lizard, they said. Then, a large, hairy humanoid creature was seen in the mountains. My mom described it as kind of like a Bigfoot or sasquatch, only it was completely white. The people who crossed its path said its eyes were very pale, and the noise they heard at night sounded exactly the same as the cry it would make when it was spotted. This anguished, horrified sound. Almost exactly a year after the sounds first started, the earthquake hit, and my parents' town, being close to the epicenter, suffered the greatest damage. Many people died, were injured, or became homeless. The wails completely stopped after the earthquake. My mom often wonders if it was some sort of angel coming to warn of the coming disaster, and then it left, being unable to communicate its message. My dad believes that whatever it was probably just died like many others, falling victim to an earthquake. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Oscar. Number 2. Dear Tattooed Biker, I want to share a story that happened to me. You see, I was 14 years old back in 1974 at a church camp up in the Cascades between Subtle Lake and Blue Lake. It's kind of a spacious little wilderness area. We decided to try and sneak out and steal a gallon of milk from the kitchen. So we were taking this sort of roundabout way in the middle of the night. That's when we started hearing these footfalls and breaking branches. I stopped my friend Ken and I said, "What the heck was that?" It kept getting louder and louder just before it stopped. I was so scared I was just sitting there, shaking. Finally, I got the nerve to shine the flashlight and we noticed there was a herd of deer there too, kind of off in the distance. We shined the flashlight and this thing started screaming. It was a sound unlike anything I'd ever heard before. Kind of like an electronic elephant sort of noise. And then it just takes off, running up the hill. We could hear the branches breaking, this screaming, and these footfalls like an elephant running through the woods. I mean, I've never heard anything shake the ground like that, and I still remember it like it happened just last week. The encounter scared me so much that the next day we both went up and checked out the area, and there were indeed footprints. There wasn't any mud to see toes, but there was in the bank and stuff, there were these huge footprints, very much bigger than mine. I tried to jump up into the air and make a footprint that deep, and no matter what I did, I couldn't do it. I and some friends showed the guy that was in charge of our cabin group, and he didn't know what to say. To this day, I'll never forget that experience. That's the sasquatch that lives in the Cascades, I guess. I was so terrified. There was a lot of adrenaline, and Ken said that he looked at it, and he thought he saw red eyes, but I never did. I just wouldn't look. He shined the flashlight, and he was smaller than me, and he laughs to this day, that there was this big guy behind me, like huddled over me. The sound was something like I'd never heard before or since, and that's what I kept saying. That it sounded like some kind of electronic noise or something. I've just never heard anything like that, and the footfalls are what really impressed me. For something to have that much weight, to sound like it was shaking the actual ground, just boom, boom, and it ran up that hill in no time. I mean, this thing really took off. I think that it might have been hunting the deer when we saw it and ticked it off, and it definitely knew we were there when we shined the flashlight. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Melvin. Number 3. Hey TB, I found your channel because, well, I've been looking for information about sightings of man-like creatures all over the internet for around the last decade. You see, back in January of 2014, I was driving home from my workplace, and I witnessed an unexplained thing cross the roadway in front of me. I was at work at the Toyota plant in Buffalo, West Virginia. I was on vacation, but needed to stop by and pick up my paycheck. It was close to 5 p.m., and I was driving home on Route 35, and then turned off onto Hurricane Creek Road, heading towards home. It was dark already by that time, and there's a wide turn, about a quarter mile from the highway. As I drove through the turn, something on 2 legs walked out of the woods and out onto the roadway. I hit the high beams, and when I did, this thing turned its head and bore its teeth, running into the opposite trees on 2 legs. I have no idea what it was, but the teeth were huge, and it was about 6 to 7 feet tall. It had a snout that looked like a bear, but the head looked like a man. Eyes, ears, and hair. The body actually had black hair all over it, but it was built like a very stocky man, with long legs and big, flat feet, and arms with a man's hand. The whole thing just shocked the hell out of me. When I got home, I told my wife, but I didn't tell my daughter. I didn't want to scare her. I've been hunting in this country all my life, but I've never seen or heard of anything quite like this. I thought I'd write to you after hearing the upright canine, dogman, and Bigfoot reports, but I don't think that this is what this is. I could only call it a bear man. I'd like to know what you thought. Signed, Jasper. Number 4. Dear Tattooed, both of these incidents happened in New Mexico, in roughly the same place. Driving from Belen to Mountain Air, there's a long, almost an hour, straight flat road called Becker Flats. Becker Flats has kind of a local reputation for weird occurrences. Drug smugglers land planes on the highway there. Strange animals are spotted. UFOs, and there's even a ranch called Mountain Shadows off the flats that has a lot of rumors about it that I'm sure aren't true, just your basic satanic panic BS. Still, back in 1990, I was driving across Becker Flats at around 9 p.m. And I swear to you, an ant the size of a shoebox ran out into the road. This thing was clearly an ant. I could make out all 6 legs, 3 body sections, and the antenna. It was just about 20 inches long, and I was going about 70 miles per hour with the high beams on. It stopped when the light hit it, and I didn't have time to swerve. Both front and rear tires hit this thing, and the car lifted up rather than crushing it, making a tremendous noise like I had just gone over a speed bump at 70 miles per hour. It scared the crap out of me, to be honest. Another time, several months later, I was in about the same place, but right after sunset this time, around 7 o'clock. The spot where this occurred was at least still about a 30-minute drive from my destination, that being Mountain Air, where I lived. That's when I passed a guy walking on the side of the highway in the same direction that I was heading. It was so unusual to see a pedestrian that I slowed down to get a better look at him. He was a Native American, most likely a Navajo in that area, with long hair and a bun, a red bandana tied around his forehead like a sweatband, and wearing jeans, a blue t-shirt, and an old army field jacket, just OD green with no camouflage pattern, like they had in the Vietnam era, with lighter sections on the sleeves where there clearly used to be 3 stripes like a sergeant. He was wearing black, pointy-toed cowboy boots and a silver concho belt. And I was thinking, wow, that's odd, and just kept driving. When I got to town about a half hour later, I passed the Mountain Air Cantina there on the main drag, and the same guy was pulling open the door to walk inside. Now, the speed limit on the main drag there is only 30 miles per hour, so I was going pretty slow, and I got a pretty good look at him. Exact same bandana, belt, boots, and jacket. As I crept past, he turned, and I swear he looked right into my eyes and held my gaze until I was past. No other cars had passed me on the way to town, and even if he had hitched a ride right after I saw him out on the flats, there was no way he could have gotten there first, unless he was in a plane. I told some friends about it just in case they knew the guy, and they said that I should be careful for a while as it sounds like I'd been marked by a skinwalker. I thought that was just BS, but I asked a couple other guys I knew who were Navajo about the guy, and I told them what I saw. And they said the same thing, except they also said that I should never mention it to anyone again. Thanks for reading. Signed, Greg.
And there it is. 4 real cryptid encounter stories from real viewers, just like you. So, what did you think about these? I'm always looking forward to reading your comments below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a strange experience, or maybe an unexplained encounter that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description and, well, your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for riding with me. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.